Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome to the Woo Curious podcast. Your map to the mystical, your key to the sacred, and your guide back home to yourself. I'm Eileen, a writer, a spiritual coach, energy healer, and slow living witch. This podcast is your invitation to explore a world where the mundane and the sacred intertwine. It's a haven for those ready to take the first steps into the realms of magic and mystery, providing a safe space for you to embark on your own enchanted journey towards healing and self-discovery. Here, I'll unveil the whispers of the mystical, the rituals often hidden in plain sight, and I'll engage in sacred conversation intended to stir your soul and lead you back into your power. I'm all about demystifying woo and witchcraft. So, whether you're a seasoned seeker or simply woo curious, I'm so delighted you've decided to join me on this journey. Let's make magic. Hello, and welcome back, Woo Crew, to another episode of the Woo Curious podcast. I am your host, Eileen, and I'm coming to you today with a solo episode. If you are watching this on YouTube, you'll notice that I'm in a different location, and I've actually been outside of the city, about an hour out of the city, farm sitting for the last 5 days. I'm here for another 4 days, and it's been really fun and challenging to be out of my routine, out of my space, fun to be out of the city. I'm taking care of 2 dogs, 3 cats, 7 horses, and 2 donkeys. And it's been lovely to connect with the animals and also learning some things about myself and my need for personal bodily space. If you've been with me for very long, you'll know that I am not a mother. I am a very proud auntie. And I have always had a deep respect for anyone who's had children and just the amount of time that they spend attached to your body. The dogs here are, well, all of the animals are really, really friendly. They really love attention. They all want attention at all times. And I've had cats my whole life and have always kind of known, what they want and need and what they're telling me and their signals and just their behaviors and mannerisms. And dogs, while I love dogs, I haven't had a dog since I was a little girl. And I don't feel like I read them very well compared to cats. And they just need so much more attention. So again, I love all animals deeply. I always have loved going to off-leash dog parks and watching them romp around. They are so joyful. It's been really fun throwing the ball for the golden retriever here, and I am gonna be okay to just have my personal space back when I go home. So that's just a little window into my world this week and where I'm at and where I'm coming to you from. I wanted to talk to you today about decision paralysis. And the reason that I want to do this is because I had a session with a client yesterday where she came to me actually for a soul counsel session because she was feeling really overwhelmed with paralysis around deciding what to do with her life. And as is so often the case, when I shared a little bit about this on my Instagram stories, another one of my clients messaged me being like, is this me? Are you talking about me? And it was funny because I was like, oh, actually, no, but that the same kind of thing is true for this other client. And I had so many people commenting and resonating with what I shared that it told me, here is the topic for this week's episode. So, decision paralysis, overwhelm. When I was chatting with this woman about what she was feeling really stuck about. So to give some context, she is working a job that she does not enjoy. It kind of pays the bills, but doesn't pay well enough in today's society, a current living expense era that we are in, to be comfortable. And she doesn't love it. It really is getting to the point where it kind of fills her with dread. And she knows she wants to pursue something different, but was feeling really stuck around the topic of what that something different might be. Sometimes when we have what feels like any option available to us, it makes it really, really difficult to choose. This person, this woman, I'm just going to call her Deb. Her name's not Deb, but in the spirit of storytelling, it's much easier to use a name. So Deb is feeling like she would like to go back to school, or she's very open to going back to school to pursue whatever career is calling her. And she was feeling like, do I stay at this current job that I have that I hate and go back to school, allowing it to support me while I do? Do I go find a different, slightly better, maybe if I can find one, job to support me while I go back to school? Do I just try to find some other career path that doesn't require me to go back to school? And there was just too many options. And before we dropped into the soul council part of the session, which actually we ended up coming out of early because it was really hard for her to drop in because of how important, or how, I don't want to say fixated, but it was almost fixated on this desire for an answer. She was. But before we did drop in, and then after as well, I asked her, when you think about making this decision, what are you afraid of? Why is it so paralyzing? Why is it so overwhelming? What fear is present? She hadn't told me she was afraid, but I kind of guessed. I'm good at that. And, educated guess, because so often when we are stuck in indecision, there is a fear at play preventing us from just choosing and just making that leap. And she said, which resonates with so many folks, she said, I'm afraid of choosing wrong. And I know that I've been in, that actually just came in real time. This is how you know these episodes are not scripted. I've been in a situation where I very much was afraid of making the wrong decision. And the situation that I'm thinking of right now, and there's been many, some of it has been career related, some of it has been personal decision related. The one that I'm thinking of is the decision to leave my marriage. And I remember very vividly sitting in my therapist's office and saying, I just wish I could try out one decision. I wish I could try out the leaving decision and see what happens. And, fast forward 5 or 10 years and see, was that the right decision to make, or am I making a stupid decision? And so I understand that fear of like, what if I get it wrong? What if I regret this decision? What if I, in this client's case, Deb was saying, she's like, what if I spend all that time and money getting some sort of schooling or education around a career that I actually end up not liking? And that is possible. There is the possibility that you will make a choice, or many choices. Actually, it's probable that there are many choices in this life that you will make that will be, in hindsight, quote unquote, not the, again, quote unquote, best choice you could have made. And yet, if we think back over our lives and all of the decisions and the things that have brought us to this place, and the things we might think of as mistakes, there is learning and growth, and there are opportunities that open because of our decisions that we would never have experienced or grown into or found if we hadn't made those decisions in the first place. And so when it comes to practicing making big decisions, there is a little bit of a leap of faith aspect that comes. We have to decide that the discomfort of staying stuck, of staying put, of staying in that job we hate or that relationship that is slowly draining us, that discomfort is worse than the fear of the unknown. And from a biological, neurological standpoint, your brain is never going to feel ready to embrace the fear of the unknown. Not truly. There is always going to be an alarm bell that signals. And that's why practicing is the word that I use. That's why I bring the term practice choosing, practice deciding into this, because it is a practice. It's a practice of over and over saying, okay, well, I can't just stay here. I mean, I could just stay here, but I don't want to just stay here. So I'm going to practice choosing to move in a direction and shifting my mindset, my belief to a space of saying, okay, well, even if this decision in hindsight isn't quote unquote the best thing I could do right now or the right thing to do right now, even if that becomes obvious down the road, can I go into this with the mindset of I am learning, I am growing, and I am moving at the very least, right? I am moving forward. I am not stagnating. For Deb, in our time together, one of the ways that I helped her find some forward momentum from our session was by asking her to choose the next smallest step. So rather than saying, okay, I'm going to quit this job, find a new one, and take environmental sciences, whatever it might be that's lighting you up, we talked a little bit about what kind of work she thinks would be meaningful for her, what lights her up without worrying about the how, just where does this passion happen for her, where does meaning, where does purpose and joy and fulfillment naturally occur in her life or in past jobs she's had, or just in general, without tying it to the how of the like, well, what job encapsulates all these things. So we started there. And rather than having to do a whole bunch of research about courses that are available or making a decision around where to go to school, all of these things, right? There's so many moving pieces when we're making big decisions like this. We started small with saying, okay, well, she knows some folks who are in lines of work that are intriguing to her. And so the plan that she left with is to start having some conversations, going out for coffee, talking to them, asking what the job entails, and speaking up in her family, in her friend group, with these people she's going to have some connections with, to say, I'm looking for a career change and I just don't know exactly where I want to go yet. Because if we don't speak our desire for change, if we don't share that we are in the process of making a decision, we close the door to opportunity that might exist if other people around us are aware that we are in this process, right? If your friend doesn't share that she wants to go to, I don't know, Timbuktu, all its has done, and you don't know that, then you wouldn't know to share with her when you see a seat sale to Timbuktu. It's just that simple. My examples are, oh my goodness. The other thing I want to speak to around this, so breaking the decision down is a good way to get out of that paralysis, that overwhelm, that like, okay, the whole plan, the whole decision feels way too big to tackle, and you just shut down and don't decide anything and stay stuck and miserable. So breaking it down and thinking, well, what's the next smallest step? What's one small thing that feels manageable that I can do today or tomorrow or this week to action and move things forward? That's one thing to consider. Another thing that I want to bring into this episode, this conversation, is it a conversation when I'm just talking to myself? Except I'm talking to you, so who knows? But another thing I want to bring in here is what another of my clients said to me when I shared my story about Deb having this paralysis, this overwhelm. I put a little slider thing on Instagram, and a few people had responded like, oh yeah, I totally resonate. And so for those folks who responded, I said, let's go one step further. What does a quote unquote wrong choice entail or mean? What are you letting it mean? And one of my very wise clients responded by saying, sometimes decisions become fraught with all the big stuff, the fear and scarcity, that it won't turn out well, that it'll be a disaster, that I won't handle it well, or that I'll disappoint others. I go external with all the what ifs and don't or can't connect with my knowing or intuition. And this, I feel like there's so much wisdom in this, right? What are you afraid of? Choosing wrong. Okay, so what is the fear behind like that wrong choice? In a lot of cases, it's a life of being a perfectionist, and perfectionism is really an attempt to control, right? To feel some semblance of control for our surroundings, for our our environment, for the things that are happening around us. It's this mythical state, right? Perfection. I think my very first Instagram post on my, at that point, my Luminous Life Instagram account for this business was about perfectionism paralysis, which is a similar thing to decision paralysis. And so sometimes it's that desire for perfection, which is really a desire to control, which is really a desire to keep things known and safe. Sometimes it is that fear that it won't turn out well and that I'll be regretful, ashamed. Maybe you judge yourself when things don't turn out very well, when you feel like you made a bad decision or a wrong decision. Again, getting into some of those underlying beliefs or patterns that are playing when we judge ourselves for our mistakes or our mishaps. Scarcity, right? What if I invest all of this money in this new tool or this new course and then I don't get what I hope I'll get from it, or I don't show up fully, or I don't commit, or I don't get the result that I need. That I'll disappoint others. That is a huge one, because so many of these expectations we have of ourselves are really just societally imposed expectations that we've been living inside for our whole lives. We have this story that plays out in our society that, especially as women, we should be choosing in our own lives in such a way that we are doing it for the benefit of others, right? It comes back to that good girl syndrome. There's this desire to be perceived as good and nice and like we've got it all together, and that semblance of perfection, that we are independent and strong and capable. And none of these things are bad in and of themselves, but the problem becomes when we're so focused on those things that we can't allow for the softness and the imperfection and the messiness that is life. Life is messy. We are going to make mistakes. You are going to fuck up. You are going to do things that hurt people. You are going to do things that you regret. And none of that makes you a bad person, even though our overarching social narratives might imply that they do. That looking externally to rationalize a decision, to gather all the facts, to make sure it's the right decision, that is a form of giving away your power. We give away our power to the people around us. And not to say that asking a trusted loved one, a family member, a friend for their input on a decision that's big, certainly, especially if that family member or friend is maybe particularly good at seeing the bigger picture or seeing what might be a path for you that you can't see because you're inside of it. Just like the way that I helped my client yesterday see some pathways forward where before she just was in a cloud of overwhelm. And at the end of the day, when we're making these big decisions, it helps so much to have practices in place that allow us to come home to our own bodies, our own knowing, our own intuition, to find the answer there. And intuition sometimes is really strong, and it's like ooh, that's a clear black and white. In fact, intuition, when we practice using it, when we get good at listening it, almost always is a fairly clear, like, yep, that's the path for me. But what happens so often, so often, I'm like shaking my head because this is my reality so often, is that we override our intuition with logic, with reason, with fact. I was going to say, I don't want to tell you how often I've invested in something that I later regretted because I invested in it despite my intuition. My logic won out, my rationalization won out, my FOMO won out. There are a couple of really large investments that I've made in myself, in my business, that when I look back, I can see really clearly that I was afraid to listen to my intuition because it didn't feel like it made as much logical sense. And so I share this with you, I think, just to give you some encouragement that it's really normal to struggle to connect in to your intuition. And even if it's easy to hear, it's not easy to follow. As we're talking about intuitive decision making, if you are feeling like you are wanting a little more support, a little more guidance around how to practice this, how to deepen into your intuition and intuitive decision making, I have an intuitive decision making mini course for you. I originally recorded this course as part of an entrepreneur bundle. However, even though I'm talking about business decision makings in the course, really a decision is a decision is a decision. And so this course is really valuable for you if you are wanting to deepen that connection to your intuition. Inside, you'll find 6 short videos on how to listen to your intuition, how to differentiate it from fear, how to use a pendulum, how to use your body. There's a pendulum chart, there's a guided visualization practice as well for connecting to your future self as part of intuitive decision making. So head on over to my website. I'll leave the link in the show notes. In the store, you'll find that intuitive decision making bundle, and I think you'll find it really supportive. When we're talking about, smaller decisions, those little micro moments of practicing following intuition, if you've been with me for very long, you'll have heard me talk about, using your intuition to choose your morning beverage, even if you know that you're going to want the coffee rationally, because that's what you do every day. Taking a moment to pause, tune in, ask yourself, do I want coffee or do I want tea? Those little practice moments for low stakes decisions are so helpful in starting to bolster our connection with our intuition, but also to start to stockpile like a trust bank. So this is something that I believe actually one of my podcast guests offered on the show. Somebody tell me if I'm remembering that right. Where when you make an intuitive decision, it's a great idea to have a place to jot it down, to note it in the moment when you're making it. A journal, maybe it's a notes app on your phone, just saying, oh, I had this decision, I checked in with my intuition said do this, and I followed it. And then touching back, a day later, a week later, however long it takes for the decision and the effects of that decision to play out, but touching back into it to say, oh, yeah, that was a really good decision. That was a great example of following my intuition and it being a good decision for me. And then collecting these moments, collecting these decisions that you make based on intuition as kind of a form of stockpiling proof for your brain. And as you do this, beginning to make bigger and bigger decisions using your intuition. Not that we don't bring logic into it at all, it would never tell you to jump off a cliff, but if your intuition was like, jump off that cliff, and your rational brain is like, no, we're going to keep us alive. I think it's a pretty silly example because our intuition would be like, do not jump off that cliff. However, I'm not decrying facts and logic and reason, and I think that making a pros and cons list is great. And if once you've made all of the factual checks and balances, if you look at it and you're like, I truly don't know which of these feels like the best decision, allowing your intuition to decide for you. and just seeing what happens and collecting that evidence to support the fact that you do in fact have the answers within you, that choosing to move forward with a path, with a decision, even if it feels scary, even if it feels like, what if I get it wrong? Even if it feels like, but people are going to be judging me, but there's something inside of you that is like, this feels good, like this is our way. Just encouraging you to lean into that. And as always, if this is something that feels really present for you in your life, if it feels like, this is all fine and great, Eileen, and I still can't see out of this freaking cloud of overwhelm that has descended on me, and the thousands of tasks I have to get done every day, and the managing of my household, and XYZ to infinity, please reach out. I do have some space to work one-on-one with a few women in 2024, starting in 2024 still. We're running out of time in this year. If you want 2025 to be the year that decision paralysis is a thing of the past, the year where you finally decide to put yourself and your needs and your rest and your joy and your everything at the top of your priority list where it should be, please reach out. I'm going to drop a link for a curiosity call or peek through the portal call into the show notes of this episode. I have been just delighting in helping my clients create time seemingly out of thin air to take care of themselves, really shifting their relationship with the things that they need to do, really deepening into a connection with their own bodies and that wisdom that lives there, and slowing down without feeling guilty about it. I also am going to have a link in the show notes to sign up for Restmas. So maybe you're fairly new to me and you're like, I'm not going to jump on a call. I barely know Eileen, and that's totally fair. Maybe you're like, I feel like a call is more than I can fit into my schedule right now. I hear you. I do want to invite each of you, my dear listeners, to join me for Restmas 2024. So if you've been here a while, you may have joined me last year. This is the third year that I am running Restmas. I freaking love this offer. It is a 21-day rest offer. So the holiday season can be frantic. It's like adding that many more things to the to-do list so often for so many women, right? We have all of the usual to-dos. We've still got kids to get to school and families to feed, but now all of a sudden we have Christmas parties, and we've got baking to do that we didn't before. We've got Christmas pageants, and we've got family dynamics to navigate, stressed out mother-in-laws, whatever it is that is your reality. Not to mention, buying all those gifts for folks in your family. Maybe you're like me and you've been assigned the role of buying the gifts for your partner to give to your family as well, adding to your decision fatigue. All this to say, I love the holiday season. As a little girl, Christmas was my favorite. I love the community. I love the connection. Gift giving is my number one love language, so there's that too. But I really just love coming together and sharing and connecting and celebrating and being cozy in the dark, long days of December. And I've heard from so many women that they struggle to even enjoy it because they're so busy creating the magic for everyone else. So Restmas is an offer for you to reclaim some of that magic, to weave in moments of connection and stillness and peace and joy into the month of December. And this time around, I'm upping the ante a bit. We're taking it up a notch. There's going to be live guided rest practices during Restmas as well. We're kicking off on December 1st with a new moon in Sagittarius with a guided rest practice to drop us into 21 days of rest together. Again, completely free. Please join me. I'd be so delighted to have you in that space. And as always, if you liked this episode, please leave a rating, a review. It helps ever so much. Share with your friends. hit me up with any questions, comments, anything you'd like me to speak to. And I believe I'll be back with a guest next week. Don't quote me on that. It might be another solo episode. In any case, I hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and bye for now.